Dada, this one of the biggest problem which many people are talking about is also how in the middle of all those crackdown on terrorists, crackdown on poppy, crackdown on everything. One of the thing which is happening very in your face kind of a scenario is the ethnic gulf which is widening and the relocation which is happening, which showed on screen numbers which many believe that it's a very very diluted numbers of which Maitis are going back to their stronghold, cookies are going back to their stronghold, and this kind of ghettoization that is happening. How troubling this scenario you perceive, Dada, as far as the state of Manipur is concerned?
Well, I'm a Bengali whose roots are in Bangladesh. Nobody understands the pain of this more than we do because we suffered partition and we have suffered persecution when Bangladesh became independent but then degenerated into military rule and backed by fundamentalists. And a lot of our people had to leave the country and come into Northeast, where again we are treated as foreigners. So nobody understands the pain of this whole scenario more than we do. A. B. I totally endorse everything that General Meston has said. He has been right on the bullseye, shooting straight. Two things I would like to add. The Myanmar situation is quite complex, and which is why I've been saying that the government of India has to play a very proactive role in taking up issues with the Myanmar military junta, because so far the MEA has been in a wait and watch mode. Wait and watch is the other name of strategic inaction. And I don't endorse that. I think we need to play, and General Meston said it, we need to engage our people. We need to send a peace mission actually to Myanmar. A. B. Poppy cultivation. Now, why is poppy cultivation happening now in bordering areas of Manipur? Because Myanmar is in turmoil. The big drug lords in Myanmar cannot access their own fields because of the civil war situation there. So these guys are turning to Manipur, encouraging local farmers to plant poppy so that they can get enough raw material for their products. And they would so, you know what? If winter comes, spring cannot be far behind. So if the poppy cultivation here has been boosted by these Burmese drug lords, they will soon move their laboratories as well, which are now located on the borders of Manipur. Three major networks, Wei Brothers, Loshinian, Jiangjimin. And I can give you details, but this is not the place. My finger is right on this. So I know what's happening. The point here is, Brijesh, we need alternatives instead of blaming any community, and I totally endorse General Meston and my good friend Dr. Kam. How can you sort of blame one community as drug trafficker? In that case, I'm going to raise the question, where were some of these drugs recovered by the police officer, the brave lady police officer Tanjam Brinda? Those people are related to very high ups, and they were not cookies, okay? So drug trafficking, which makes more money, everybody in Manipur is involved, sir. All communities, and especially the big politicians. Okay? I don't want to take names here, but you go and ask, Brajesh, why don't you bring Tanajam Brinda, who is no longer in the police force, and get her to discuss drugs, because she has suffered. As a police officer, she cracked down. She arrested a few people. And then hell broke loose and she had to leave a police job. Very honest, courageous lady police officer, and she's a Meitei herself. The reason she was not physically attacked is because her father-in-law is a big, big insurgent leader. My good friend Tamo Megan, RK Megan. Now, anyway, coming back to the point here, this I will make, and I've said this before, I've been a farmer, I've done rubber, I've done spices, I of course have done both pisciculture, fisheries, Bengali means fish, and then rice. Now there are certain crops which are good for the valley, rice, fish, okay, fine. But in the hills, because of the topography, it's very difficult. Therefore, in the hills, you need to plant spices, you need to find some crops which will give the tribal farmers a good income, and then they will not turn to poppy. So, what is the Manipur Agriculture Department doing? What are these bloody extension officers doing? And I'm using the word bloody consciously to drive home a point. Like General Meston, I don't go into the army, but I'm a Rimkolian. Habits die hard. So I've said this. What are these agricultural extension officers doing? कनका गिन रहे हैं बैठ के. इनको भेजो उधर. बोलो नया क्रॉप देंगे. ट्राइबल्स को बोलेंगे साहब जो त्रिपुरा में होता है. These are 17 different spices are there. We did rubber and we found that it has some adverse effect on the environment. So now, and also the international market for rubber is falling because you now have a lot of substitute for rubber. So what we are doing there is spices. Why we are doing spices, Rajesh? Next door to us is Bangladesh. Muslims, 93%. गोश्त खाना है तो बगैर स्पाइस का नहीं होगा भाई साहब. So you have a ready market there of 170 million people.
True.
You don't have to sell your spices anywhere. Just get them into Bangladesh and you get dollars in return. So why can't Manipur do, ginger grows very much on these borderlands of Manipur and Mizoram. Can't we get a ginger ale factory there started? And the Indian army will happily take the products. The Assam Rifles I've seen proudly take all these local products and give us as gifts when we visit their camps. The army is a captive market, sir. This is a 1 million plus army. So they will buy this, health drink rather than, what they usually are used to, rampani. Right?
True.
So I am making definitive suggestions. And you know what? People like me and General Meston actually should go and give a dressing down to all these politicians on the Salib, parade करवा
no.
मैदान का 5 चक्कर, मैदान का 5 चक्कर. ये जो उल्टा सीधा काम करते ना ये लोग जाके भड़काते हैं लोगों को इनके लिए
I completely agree with you. What do you have to say about the big relocation which is happening, the divide, the ethnic gulf which is happening as far as the state of Manipur is concerned? How do you think, it's very difficult for you to put a time frame to it, but do you see this gulf being bridged?
Yeah, Vijay, if you allow me, let me try to further, flesh out what Dada was alluding to, the very complex nature of this drug trade in the Indo-Myanmar borderland. And if you look at the statistics, which the Superintendent of Police, Narcotics and Bureau Affairs, Government of Manipur furnished between 2017 and 2022, you have a very, chilling data or statistic, which states that out of the more than, 4,000, almost 5,000 cases of drug haul in the state, 824 cases was trapped among the Koki chain group, and more than 1,500 among the Meitei-speaking communities, including the Pangals, the Muslim, we call them, as well as 180 cases in other cases. So if you have a feel of the ground realities in Manipur and in the border, in the southern border, you'll find that most of the drug lords and drug as well as gun runners are proscribed organization based in the valley. And they are conduit to a larger international circuit of drug as well as armed traders. And in that sense, the kind of political optics that you see where Koki Zhou communities are targeted is very, very superficial, because as Dada was alluding to, the major drug haul that the former MPS officer, Manipur police officer Brinda, in effect tried to expose, and which in effect caused her police service as well in Tengnopal district. And look at the most recent charge by Raghumani, the Uripok MLA, writing a letter asking the government of India to investigate the May 2019 major drug haul in which two of the drug dealers from the valley areas have direct political patronage from a very influential cabinet minister in the state. So that's that some of these facts are not often broadcasted in metro-based national medias, and you have a very distorted version of all these complex chains of drugs, as well as gun dealers. And also remember the fact that because of a very prolonged implementation of enforcement of armed force special forces in Northeast India, even the state establishment, the armed personnels, high-ranking military officials are caught occasionally, deeply involved in all this
Lieutenant
conflict,
Colonel Sanjay
which
Chaudhary.
is very, very deeply problematic. The second point that you raised, and the major point that you raised, is on the issue of relocation. You see, the data that you have given earlier on the ghettoization that happens, to my mind, also busted the myth that, at least, although on the superficial de jure or the legal foundation, the Métis in the valleys do not seem to have ownership rights in the hill areas. These recent raids, in effect, expose that myth that de facto manipulation happened very extensively, and that is precisely where the sense of insecurity and anxiety of the tribal stem from. And let us also remember the fact that all this hullabaloo about drug opium trade, or eviction of forest, encroachment on forest areas, in effect hide a larger agenda, which in the literature on civil war we call it greed theory, which the Oxford political scientist Paul Collier and his collaborator Anke Hoffler pointed out that it's largely a question of resource politics that unravel in the hill areas. Remember that from around 2010, the Jubilant company, which is a Netherlands-based company which has its branch office in Noida, has entered into petroleum exploratory license with the government of India and have undertaken extensive exploratory surveys in the hill areas, predominantly in Churachandpur and Farzol district today. And you remember that these areas are sitting on a very rich and fertile oil basin, which is called Assam Arakan Basin, right? And out of the 32 drilling, oil pipes that Jubilant Energy, in effect, try to exploit, 17 are located in Churachandpur and Farzol. So in that sense, the integrationist and majoritarian-minded section, not only of the political establishment, but also of civil society organization in the valley areas, find this a very attractive proposition. And this is the thread, which drive the recent attempt to either sidestep or dissolve existing sub-state constitutional asymmetrical institution in the form of hill areas committee. That is precisely why you have routinized, sidestepping of hill areas committees. Precisely, that is the place where most of these flare-ups happen, because the hill areas committee have also somehow mastered its spine recently and passed a resolution to the effect that any resolution passed by the state government declaring certain areas as protected forest, reserve forest, or wildlife sanctuary without routing the matter to the hill areas committee, which is mandated by law as well as the constitution, would be null and void. And that is precisely where much of the attention should have been focused upon, and we seem to be engaging in a lot of side talk as well as side debate. And the core of this argument is that the integrationist and majoritarian-minded Métis, which is principally led by the Biren Singh-led BJP government, and I finds deeply discomfort with, and that is precisely that explains why they are very aggressive push to dissolve existing tribal land rights have ignited so much of opposition as well as resistance against this agenda. So in that sense, all this talk about drug deals, gun deals, are pertinent as well as plausible, and given that it also entails huge ethical as well as moral issues. Please remember that nobody in the hills like poppy planters. In effect, this is existential insecurity that much of these hill communities face, as Dada has also pointed out, given that because of extensive Zoom cultivation in the hill areas, the fertility of the land have eroded over time, and they have to possibly search out, alternative economic viability proposition. And the poppy planter, because of the fast economy that it engenders, becomes a very attractive proposition. So in that sense, no single community in Manipur, in effect, have morals or ethical justification for poppy cultivation. But let us not miss out the larger picture, which is the greed of very few vested political economic interests, which try to grab, and dissolve existing, sub-state constitutional arrangement in the hill areas. I think that is where the needle of suspicion and the whole conflagration have emanated from. I think let us not miss this big picture.
True.